The political winds that carried Donald Trump back to the White House in 2025 did not stop at America's shores. They have crossed the Atlantic, finding fertile ground in a Europe already grappling with its own anxieties about identity, sovereignty, and the future of its institutions. The Make America Great Again movement, once seen as a uniquely American phenomenon, has evolved into a transnational ideological export. Its core tenets, a deep suspicion of global institutions, a fervent promotion of national interest above all else, and a cultural war waged against perceived liberal elites, are now echoing loudly in the halls of power from Budapest to Warsaw and beyond. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of a deliberate and well-funded effort. This ideological transfer is being formalized through a network of conferences, think tanks, and personal alliances that form a kind of illiberal international. Events like the Conservative Political Action Conference, or CPAC, are no longer just American affairs. This past May, CPAC held back-to-back gatherings in Poland and Hungary, featuring prominent Trump administration figures like Vice President J.D. Vance and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. They stood on European stages and preached a gospel of anti-bureaucracy and patriotic virtue, openly intervening in the domestic politics of allied nations. Noem, for instance, brazenly urged Poles to reject a liberal candidate, calling him a train wreck, a shocking breach of diplomatic protocol that signals a new, more aggressive era of political alignment. Behind the speeches and handshakes lies a more permanent infrastructure. American conservative organizations like the Heritage Foundation are forging deep partnerships with European counterparts. In Poland, they collaborate with the ultra-conservative legal institute Ordo Juris, while in Hungary, the government-funded Matthias Corvinus Collegium, or MCC, has become a key node for disseminating these ideas. These groups work to translate the MAGA playbook into a European context, advocating for policies that challenge the legal and social framework of the European Union. They campaign against what a US State Department official, Samuel Sampson, has called digital censorship and attacks on religious freedom by mainstream European governments, framing their struggle as a shared civilizational battle. The message is clear and compelling to a growing segment of the European electorate. Your national identity is under threat from Brussels. Your traditions are being erased by progressive ideology, and your economic security is being sacrificed for globalist projects. This narrative, amplified by powerful American allies and tailored for local audiences, turns abstract fears into a concrete political program. It transforms the MAGA slogan into a versatile call to action, easily adapted to Make Hungary Great Again or Make Poland Great Again. The bridge for this ideology has been built, and the traffic across it is heavy, fundamentally reshaping the political landscape of the continent. At the heart of this European transformation stands one figure in particular, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. For years, Orbán has cultivated his image as Europe's chief rebel, a vanguard against the liberal consensus of Brussels. With Trump's return to power, he has been vindicated and empowered, positioning himself as the continent's primary interpreter and implementer of MAGA-style governance. He has transformed Hungary into a political laboratory where the theories of national conservatism are put into practice. His government has systematically tightened its grip on the judiciary, the media, and academia, all while championing a vision of an illiberal democracy that prioritizes national culture and sovereignty over the checks and balances championed by the EU. Orbán's Hungary has become a pilgrimage site for the global right. The CPAC Hungary event in May 2025 was a coronation of sorts, a gathering of the new nationalist tribe. Flanked by leaders like Spain's Santiago Abascal and a host of other European right-wing politicians, the conference boldly declared the dawn of a new era. With the triumph of Donald Trump and the rise of the European right, the age of the patriots of Western civilization has begun. This was more than just rhetoric, it was a statement of intent. Orbán has skillfully used these gatherings to build a coalition of like-minded leaders, offering them a blueprint for how to challenge the EU from within and forge a new, sovereigntist path. The policies enacted under the Orbán model are a direct reflection of this ideology. The government pours resources into promoting a specific version of Hungarian culture and history, framing it as a defense against foreign influence and progressive social movements. It has passed laws targeting LGBTQ+ rights and restricted academic freedom, all under the banner of protecting traditional family values. Economically, while Orbán welcomes foreign investment on his own terms, his rhetoric is fiercely protectionist when it suits him. He has mastered the art of using the EU's funds while simultaneously railing against its authority, a playbook that other aspiring populists across the continent are now studying with great interest. This model is not just about domestic policy, it is a foreign policy strategy. Orbán has cultivated close ties with Russia and China, often acting as a spoiler within both the EU and NATO to block unified actions he deems contrary to Hungary's interests. He has, for example, echoed Trump's skepticism of unconditional support for Ukraine. By demonstrating that a small nation can defy the Western consensus and not only survive but thrive politically, Orbán has created an alluring example. He has shown that it is possible to remain within the EU and NATO while actively working to undermine their core principles, making him a central and dangerous figure in the new transatlantic political order. The spread of MAGA-inspired politics is not proceeding without fierce resistance. For every government that embraces the nationalist agenda, there are powerful forces pushing back, creating a continent more politically polarized than at any time in recent memory. The new policies championed by the right, hardline immigration stances, challenges to EU legal supremacy, and protectionist trade measures are meeting a wall of opposition from traditional centrist parties, civil society groups, and a significant portion of the European populace. This clash is defining the political battlefield in nearly every member state, turning national elections into referendums on the very soul of Europe. This opposition is visible in the streets and at the ballot box. While the right celebrated its gains, recent elections have shown the limits of its appeal. In Romania and Portugal, far-right parties fell short of their ambitions. Even in Poland, a key target for the nationalist movement, the first round of the presidential election saw the conservative candidate fail to secure an outright victory. In Hungary, Orbán himself is facing renewed pressure. In May, tens of thousands of protesters filled the streets of Budapest, galvanized by a rising liberal opposition that is challenging his long-held grip on power. These are not isolated incidents. They are signs of a robust democratic counter-mobilization. The economic front is another key area of conflict. Donald Trump's America First doctrine poses a direct threat to European prosperity, and this is creating fractures even within the global right. In April 2025, the mere threat of a 50% tariff on all EU goods sent shockwaves through global markets, wiping out trillions in stock value. Trump's assertion that the EU rips us off undermines the narrative of a unified civilizational alliance. European populists may share a cultural agenda with their American counterparts, but their national economic interests often diverge sharply. A trade war initiated by Washington would harm European industries, forcing even nationalist leaders to choose between their transatlantic allies and their own economic well-being. This dynamic is forcing a painful reckoning within Europe. The rise of the MAGA-aligned right has deepened existing fault lines, particularly between Western and Eastern Europe. Debates over the rule of law, which were once bureaucratic disputes, are now existential battles. When a country like Hungary or Poland adopts policies seen as eroding democratic norms, it triggers a crisis that threatens the entire EU project. The pushback is therefore not just about defeating a political opponent, it is a fight to defend the foundational principles of the post-war European order, liberal democracy, open markets, and cooperation. The continent is dangerously divided, and the stakes could not be higher. Faced with an unreliable American partner and a rising internal challenge, Europe finds itself at a critical crossroads. The old certainties of the Transatlantic Alliance have evaporated, forcing a fundamental rethink of the continent's strategic posture. European leaders and thinkers are now urgently debating how to navigate a world where Washington may no longer be a dependable guarantor of their security or economic stability. A consensus is emerging around a three-pronged strategy: reinvent multilateral institutions, fight back to defend democratic values, and most importantly, diversify dependencies away from the United States to build genuine strategic autonomy. The security dimension is the most pressing concern. Trump's open skepticism toward NATO and his pressure on Ukraine to cede territory to Russia have sent a chill through European capitals. His proposals to withdraw US troops from the continent to focus on Asia or domestic priorities are no longer seen as empty threats. In response, a new seriousness is taking hold regarding European defense. There are concrete discussions about Europe collectively purchasing critical American military technologies not just for use, but as a stepping stone to developing its own independent defense industrial base. The dream of strategic autonomy, long a talking point in Brussels, is now being pursued with a newfound sense of urgency. Economically, Europe is preparing for the worst. The threat of a devastating trade war has spurred the EU to develop retaliatory measures and accelerate its push for self-sufficiency in critical supply chains, from semiconductors to raw materials. The goal is to make the European economy more resilient to populist shocks, whether they originate from across the Atlantic or from within its own borders. This involves strengthening the single market, investing in green and digital transitions as a source of competitive advantage, and forging new trade alliances with other global partners who remain committed to a rules-based international order. It is a defensive strategy, born of necessity. Ultimately, the future of Europe will be determined by its ability to answer one question: is the European Union a project of shared values, or merely a transactional arrangement? The rise of a MAGA-inspired right argues for the latter, envisioning a Europe of nations where sovereign interests always trump collective action. The counter-argument, championed by a broad coalition of political and civic forces, is that Europe's strength and security lie in its unity and its commitment to liberal democracy. The coming years will be a test of this proposition. Europe's path forward may involve a difficult and costly divorce from its old dependencies, but it may be the only way to preserve the democratic project for a new generation.